This edition of Meet America. I'm Annie Griffin, and we are on the road searching for your public horses on public land. And we have now come to the area called Battle Mountain. It is near Tonopah. The district. And we are seeing a small band of wild horses here. We have just visited with the BLM and tried to understand why they are removing our wild horses at such an alarming rate. And I personally have discovered that cattle on a certain herd management area that is designated principally for the wild horse has cattle on it certain times of the year that are competing with the horses' forage. And then they're saying that the horses have to be removed because there's just not enough forage. So, and that under the premise that of multiple use, which BLM is mandated to abide by under federal law. And our argument is that these herd management areas were allocated to the wild horse principally in 1971. And at that time, 53 million acres was allocated to them. And they only have left now 19 million acres have been taken from them. Whereas the cattle under the Taylor Grazing Act of 1934 has 152 million acres allocated to them, in which the wild horse is not allowed to share any of that. So you can see the unfair management practices that have taken place over the years. And we believe that is because of cattle ranching pressures. Now the cattle ranching is now infringing on these horse management areas to the tune of 3,000 to 4,000 head of cattle at different times of the year, amounting to 10,000 animal units of feed per year, we have calculated at the BLM office in Tonopah. So what we have to say to the BLM, and this is what the public needs to say, is that in these herd management areas, because you have taken away so much of their original land that was originally 53 million acres and has now been whittled down to 22 million, that you have to reduce the amount of cattle from 3,000 to maybe 150 head per year to make up for that compensation of the horses losing their primary land. If this isn't done, we're not going to have any wild horses left, or very few, because their viable herd genetic population is going to be greatly diminished. So I hope you understand this. And this little herd here,
it's a band,
is a little band, and there they are.
Five.
And you can see the landscape that they graze on. The BLM is saying that this is not appropriate landscape for them, but we're saying if that's so, how are they surviving at all? Because horses cannot reproduce when they're starving. The BLM is saying, well, we don't want to wait till they're starving. We're saying, prove to us they're starving. They're saying they can do that, but we have not seen any proof yet. So what we're suggesting to them is let the horses be, and then at that time when you see that they are so-called going into starvation mode, which wild animals tend to do, you can feed them. You can drop food down for them by helicopter or whatever, let them feed for a few days, and then trailer the excess amount of these horses out, and either put them on zeroed out herd management areas, work with other districts that have zeroed out the herd management areas, and allow the horses to be removed to those other areas BLM's premise is that horses destroy the environment, but the truth is that nature does not create animals to destroy the environment. The only thing that destroys the environment is people. And horses, their manure creates topsoil, and they reseed the environment. They reseed because their manure, their digestive system doesn't digest all the seeds. And so there's this sort of conflict science, as you might say. And here is an example of bob wire. You may not be able to see it, but I'm going to show it to you in a minute, of where the BLM has fenced off an area and says that one area has regenerated. But as I stand here, it doesn't look any different on this side of the fence as it does on that.
Back there, though, we did see a lot of
Yeah,
difference.
but back further, we did see a lot of regeneration on the side of the fence that was fenced off from horses, cattle, and other wild forms such as antelope and elk and deer. So I say, as long as we can see healthy horses, we should not be removing them, because the healthy horses are telling us there's forage there. How can healthy horses reproduce when they're starving? And then you have to allow for a certain amount of nature's ways. All animals sort of ebb and flow. And on that note, do you have anything to add there? This is Craig Downer.
Yeah,
Introduce yourself.
my name's Craig Downer. I'm a wildlife ecologist and a fourth-generation Nevadan, descendant of pioneers here. I've always valued these magnificent animals because they're so beautiful and powerful, and I've sensed they're harmonious. And in the areas where I grew up, like the Pine Nut Range, I observed them living in harmony with the pinyon and juniper forests and the lowland grassier areas, and also the highland meadows. And I observed their migrations, but then gradually I saw how the big ranchers, the cattle and sheep ranchers, Basque and German, Basque sheepers and German ranchers and others were trying to push them out and discredit them, and how the Indian agent Robert Hunter wrote a letter requesting for their total removal on behalf of the Indians, and that was unfair. I went and spoke with the tribal chairman of the Washoe tribe in Gardnerville, and he said no, we're being used. And then just generally now, 60% of the Pine Nut Range has been declared horse-free, and they only have an appropriate management level of around 150 horses in an area that's 26 miles long and 15 miles wide. It's just very unfair, and granted it's drier here, but still the horses are very mobile. They're semi-nomadic animals. They can move all around, and they have a lot to contribute to the soils, as Ann Griffin said. We need to appreciate, let them fill their niche and employ principles of reserve design, so they can become self-stabilizing and in balance with the other species here, and not be so negative toward these wonderful animals that had their cradle of evolution and millions of years of evolution here in North America. Thank you. Some other factor, like the soil is different.
This is another small band. I'm sorry I can't bring you better pictures of them. Some white horses, but as you can see, these horses thrive in this land, and BLM is saying that there's just not enough forage for them. But we're seeing horses being rounded up and they're healthy, and they're saying, well, we want to round them up while they're healthy. We don't want to wait until they starve. And we're saying, wait a minute, you have to prove to us they're starving. So the battle goes on, because we believe that there's a lot more forage out here for them than BLM proclaims. And the proof is that they're expanding their numbers. Starving horses, again, cannot procreate. They die. They're starving. And how can they bring cattle out here into these areas? And these horses were found here in 1971, and that's why this is one of their herd management areas. They were surviving back then. Now the cattle people are trying to tell us that the forage was different. It doesn't matter. The horses are still thriving out here. And we believe that their numbers are self-sustaining if BLM would let them. And we'd like BLM to prove that to us. And at the point where the horses are starving, then if you want, you can drop food for them down there at their area. And then after they have eaten for a few days and are strong enough, you can put traps, gather up those horses that are starving, and take them to holding areas, as they are doing now, by the thousands. This would greatly reduce the numbers in holding. But oh no, no matter what we suggest to the BLM, they just don't want to do it. Due to ranchers who are raising cattle. So you see, folks, it comes right down to it again. If you reduce your meat intake, you're going to help us save our wild horses. It's really that simple. Okay.
All right, these are mule deer, Odicoleus hemionus, and they're one of the most common mammals in the United States, along with the white-tailed deer. And they're hunted, of course, especially here in the West. And they are a natural part, but they're not nearly as deeply rooted in North America as the horses are, or the burros for that matter.
Finally, dear viewers, we have found a little covey of wild horses in the Stone Cabin Valley herd management area. The fence here is put up to protect the horses from the highway. However, those reflector lights that we talked about earlier that work very successfully could have been put up instead, because this takes the 400,000 acre herd management area and literally cuts it in half, which means that their water source could be greatly diminished. Now you can see that horse is in really fine condition, and this is January 3rd, 2011. They are fat and healthy and doing just fine, yet they will be removed on the premise that they're going to starve to death in this vast rangeland area. My premise is, let the horses speak for the people. Let their condition speak for the people. If you allow scientists who may be paid by cattle interests to go out and do studies that are unverifiable and trust their science, we're going to continue to see the removal of our wild horses and put in holding at great expense to tax dollars, to taxpayers. Do these horses look like they're starving to you? Do they look like... This is in January, folks. The dead of winter. They look fat and healthy to me. And their best time of condition happens to be in the fall. Getting a close-up picture. Do you see ribs there? These are the finest conditioned horses in the world. If you remember the film Hidalgo, he won the endurance race, the greatest endurance race in the world, in Arabia, in the sands, the desert sands of Arabia. It is really a shame when horses become afraid of man. Horses that have done so much for us in human history, that were once our friends and given to us as a covenant by God, the Great Spirit, who rode us through history, who fought in our wars, that they should become afraid of us too, as all other animals on this earth are. But the last approachable friends we have in the wilds. And it's up to you folks to come out here and start talking to the BLM offices and letting them know in no uncertain terms of your passion to save our wild horses, our wild heritage, our history, our Wild West. And if you can't do that, if that's the kind of America and Americans we've become, then don't cry when they come for you and they start telling you that you've got to do this and that, and you have no rights at all anymore. The horses are the messengers, and they are telling you just how far our government is going in lying and deceiving to the people by saying these horses are starving and they have to be removed. I am here to prove it to you myself. In Battle Mountain, Nevada. Battle Mountain is up for what they call RMP renewal. Every 20 years they do a new RMP. And your input is absolutely vital during this time. And it's very important to say these horses, until you can prove they are starving, must be allowed to self-regulate and self-propagate, because they will self-sustain themselves, as the Montgomery herd apparently has.
All right, this is a non-wild horse anti-cattle guard without rebars, and that's against the original regulations that governed the management and protection of wild horses and burros. Wherever they have the legal herd areas or territories, they're supposed to have rebars, because horses will panic and they'll run into these and break their legs and die gruesome deaths. In the old days, they used to chase them with jalopies, and they used to chase them into these, and they die and perish very cruel death. So why aren't they continuing with this? It wouldn't take much to solder rebars into these cattle guards.
Well, this is another example of BLM caring about our wild horses, you see?
Not caring.
No, I'm being sarcastic here, because they're saying that they care and they have to round them up because they want them to starve, yet they allow them to break their legs. Now look at these healthy bunch of horses. Do they look like they're starving to you? This is January 8th, 2011. Healthy, beautiful horses. Yet these horses are going to be rounded up on the premise.
It's February the 3rd.
Excuse me, it is February the 3rd. I'm way, way behind.
Yeah.
Woo-wee. Excuse me, audience, February the 3rd. And that makes it even deeper into winter. And yet these horses are in fine condition, as you can see. And this is what I wanted to come out and see for myself, what kind of condition these horses were in. Because certainly we don't want our horses to starve.
There's another band way off there, middle of the valley. There's quite a nice number of horses here. I hope they stay this way.
This is one of the few areas we've been able to actually see a lot of horses. Some nice bands.
Yeah, and we'll see more here to the south. There's more to the north, but we saw a lot of them to the south. We saw about 7, 8 bands. So in other words, this we have to put into the new input. So they will put rebars. And the fact they're doing so well kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
It does. Yet BLM, we just heard, they're going to be removing these because they're afraid they're going to starve. Now look at what they're eating, folks. Is that rice grass they're eating, or what is it? Craig?
They're eating little cheat grasses and little rice grasses and little wild weeds and vines.
No, but in this horse particularly, I'm focusing on that horse right there. You see through the lens. Can you see what he's eating? What is he eating?
Okay. He's eating some small little grasses or at the base of the shrubs.
Is that rice grass he's eating? Or is that...
I'd have to get closer to see exactly what it is. But it could be
See how gently they forage, folks? Nature doesn't lie to us, and the horse's condition do not lie to us. So I don't think we should be listening to BLM telling us that these horses need 1,000 acres per one horse. That's the appropriate management level per horse. Yeah, because that gives them an excuse to remove all these horses. So what we would like you to say, public, to President Obama and to Ken Salazar and to BLM is until horses are starving, they must not be removed. And at the point they are starving, you then drop hay for them in their area where they're starving. You drop down traps. You collect them up. Whether it's 3 or 4 days after they condition themselves and they're well enough to travel, and you take them to holding areas where they can recuperate, and then you can either adopt them out, and that would cause a lot less numbers being removed than what they're doing now. Because they have not so far proven to us that our horses are starving. Yes, there are horses that do starve out in the wilds. They get old, their teeth get worn down.
They contribute their remains to the other animals.
Yeah, it's a part of nature. That happens. But I think you can see here what we're trying to tell you.
Colorful mountains, huh? Looks like a rainbow. Did you get this band over here?
Yes, I did.
I'd say there's 3 different bands here. Unless that's all one band there and another band over there. 2 or 3.
Now I'd like to point out to you, viewers, the way the horses walk, they tend not to walk on the shrubs. I'm going to focus now on these shrub areas to prove my point. If you can see, there's spaces between that the horses seem to walk, leaving the shrubs intact, which shows to me that horses want to preserve the plants that they eat. And therefore, they carefully walk in areas that do not contain the food that they eat. Am I correct in this assumption, Craig, or what do you think?
That's true of most of the herbivores in their
Okay,
natural state.
you're going to have to get real close.
Yeah, that's true of most of your herbivores or vegetable eaters. Yeah, they don't want to damage, their natural instinct is not to damage the plant.
So what we're seeing here, folks, if you can see a long view, you can see all the interspersed vegetation. It's intact. Now, the cattle ranchers are telling us that they trample the vegetation. And unless they're running and panicking for whatever reason, being hunted or whatever, this just is not the case here.
Sometimes they will paw at vegetation in order to get the grass, but
that's their natural right.
not excessively. I mean, there's lots of bushes around here. I don't see.
I mean, why is it that human beings can destroy most of the planet, and they begrudge the herd animals, a certain amount of area to paw, to excavate, to water and feed? This is the question I put to you. If you want to save your wild horses, it's time to speak up. What a beautiful place that you can bring your family. Camp out here in this beautiful wilderness for days on end if you want, and observe all the different wildlife. Again, we don't see starving horses. I want you to try to observe as best you can what they're eating, because you can see how they can sustain themselves so beautifully on this dry shrubbery that you see. Normal horses just couldn't do that. So from our office visit with BLM here today, on February 3rd,
Thursday the 3rd,
I want to repeat what we learned. We learned that cattle are allowed to graze on horse management areas. Our bone of contention is that since they already have 152 million acres that are exclusively for cattle under the Taylor Grazing Act, that their horse management areas under the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act mandate that the horse shall be the principal presence. That means that they have first rights, even under multiple use, that all other species have to give way to allowing for the horse's presence. So that means that they have to get rid of some of the elk, some of the deer, some of the cattle, if those species are taking away the forage for the wild horses. Now that's very clear. You don't need a lawyer to explain that to you. Anyone can understand that. Unfortunately, our laws and lawyers will convolute everything and justify everything to the point where we don't have laws anymore. But people, we know what's right, and we have to take back what's ours. And ours is the wild horse. An amazing animal. And the burro goes right with it.
It's a bachelor man.
It's a bachelor?
Yeah, it's a young bachelor man.
How do you know?
Because I have a lot of experience.
Hey, there they are coming up.
3 bachelors.
Okay, now just stop for a minute.
Young bachelors,
Now,
Since you've seen that like me. Yeah.
hello.
Oh, a magnificent horse.
Don't they look in perfect condition, everyone? Isn't that a beautiful sight? You're America. Meet America, folks. This is the greatness of America. This is the part that is so beautiful about America. Its wildness, its beauty, and the fact that the people try to make it so. This is your horse, your young bachelor horse, who wants to live wild and free. Don't let him gather them up and castrate them and put them into little holding pens the rest of your life. They talk about adoption program, but right now they just don't have it. There's not enough people to adopt them. And then they sell them off to the horse killers. Now let's watch what they're eating. This is the Stony Cabin Valley Horse Herd Management Area in Battle Mountain, Nevada. And you're looking at some of your wild horses. Now, I'm looking for trampled bushes, folks, because that's one of the things the ranchers are saying, that the horses trample the bushes, but I can't see any. I'm really looking hard. I see a footprint here, right here, but it just missed this little bush here. This bush is intact. All these bushes are intact. If you get my meaning, if you get my drift. Again, here's a hoof print. But it's not on the vegetation itself. Here's another hoof print, but it's not on the vegetation, is it? And all around are hoof prints, but they're not on the vegetation. Do you see what I'm trying to point out to you? The big lie that they're destroying the environment, they're trampling down vegetation. Well, I point out to you all these footprints and all these bushes around intact. We are gathering evidence to see whether or what they're saying is true. And this is one of the big factors, isn't it? Isn't that what the cattle ranchers are saying, Craig?
They'll often say that they
I can't hear you, Craig. Can you see?
They'll say they destroy the vegetation and pull the grass up by the roots, but it's actually cattle and sheep that do that with their tongues. Because they don't have upper incisors.
Okay, but
rarely will a horse do that.
But I'm talking about trampling the bush right now. Do you see any trampled? I need a wildlife ecologist to verify that what I'm saying is true here, even though I have visual. Do you see any? Maybe you can point out some.
There are times when they will paw at bushes to get grass.
Right.
And when there's snow, also they'll paw through the snow and
but
break
here,
the ice.
do you see trampled? I always see a footprint here, I don't see a footprint here.
They tend to step around the bushes in general.
Okay, so there we have a wildlife ecologist verifying what you and I are seeing here. There's again a footprint there, but not on the bush. So another example, folks. Now here's an area heavily trotted by little foal and its mother, but not on the bush. Why isn't it being trampled here? Why didn't they just carelessly step here? Because horses are ecologists. They were born into nature to be so. This is a nice little horse herd, but not for long, folks, because out of the 534 horses here, they're going to be rounding them up 200 and something. When they're perfectly healthy, in the dead of winter, right now, there's no need to decrease their numbers. Now, when we were in the BLM office, one of the employees there stated that manure can take years. What did she state? That manure horse manure to break down can take a year or more. But yet, as you can see in this decomposition of the manure, it's already decomposing.
Yeah, it's starting to decompose.
You see? And it breaks open. Let's see if we can find any seeds in here.
You see how intact it is, and so actually a lot of animals can re-eat it, even the horses themselves can re-eat that.
I'm sure that there's seeds in here that eventually in the next rains will help reseed the soil, or at least give topsoil. There seems to be some mares and foals coming up to us. What other animal comes up to us, dear viewers? What other animal? They're the only animal left on the planet that actually doesn't really run away from us, because it remembers its connection with us. It remembers that great love that we've held between each other. They remember carrying us through history on their backs. And they're asking you now to help them. And if it means giving up beef, so be it. If it means sending a message to these ranchers and to these lobbyists in Washington that we want to preserve our wild herds, then we'll do that. We'll make that sacrifice. I ask you, viewers, what if God were a horse? Would God be pleased about the way we treat them? After all the horse has done for us? I think that's the band leader right there. She's kind of...
That would be the stallion.
Pardon?
That would be the patron.
Yes.
The group leader.
Oh, you think that's the stallion?
Of the band.
The one that's moving back and forth?
Because he's the protector.
Come on.
Yeah, that would be the patron or the protector stallion of the band.
Ah.
Yeah.
And he's warning, he's saying, come on, we're moving off now. These people are up to no good.
Well, it's always good they keep their distance from
Yes.
us.
Maybe they'll do some running for us, huh, Craig?
Yeah, you just saw a spurt there.
Hey, how about doing some running for us? Remember that?
We're getting some nice mellow rays.
Yes.
Rays. I'll see if I can spot any over here further to the south. Otherwise, we could go north and see if we can spot the band that was to the north. It looks like a real wild band, dark horses.
Well, I don't know how wilder we can get than
We've had
these.
some wonderful observation here, though. Nice how they're outlined with the sun there,
Yes.
silhouetted. You get that, how that catches their fur. Have nice winter coats.
They're looking in good condition, folks. They're not starving, like the BLM is telling us. And they should not be removed until they are in that state of almost starvation. At that point, we can pick them up and feed them.
Here you do see how the manure is decomposing into the soil and contributing to the humus level. See? I'm giving a little help with my stick.
Yeah.
That's happening. Oh, what a beautiful area here. Place for the wild horses to be free.
Well, it seems that Battle Mountain so far has more horses than anywhere else we've been. They're getting ready to start removing them.
Oh, is that what they said?
Well, they're going to remove something like 200 of them out of the 500 and something that are here.
Yeah, they'll take them down to probably lower end of their appropriate management level. One thing is it dries out pretty quickly out in this dry desert. Yeah, there's another band right over here looking at us. Nice looking horses. See them over there? Just a band of 4. Might be another bachelor band, or just a young band.
The stallion just did a gnashing of teeth.
Oh.
All right, folks, I'm going to give you a panorama of their area so you can see where they live. This vast ecological wonderland that they help to keep as nature's natural gardeners.
We're out by Gifford Spring, by the way. That's the name of it.
They can't hear
We're out by Gifford Spring, named after the old pioneer family that I met back in the 1980s, early 80s, when I worked for Animal Protection Institute. And it's called Stone Cabin Valley because one of the first settlements just had a stone cabin where the pioneers lived. And that cabin stood for many years. So it's a magnificent land, and we can share it for the freedom and the land with these magnificent horses. It's right now 5:10. The sun just went down.
We're at
All right, we're in the Goldfield.
No, you have to be
we're in
like there.
We're in the Goldfield Wild Horse and Burro Herd Management Area, mainly here for burros. And I noticed that the Montezuma ranching allotment occurs here and in a few other herd management areas, and that in this Montezuma ranch has the right to graze on 538,297 acres for a total of 10,688 animal unit months. And that, however, the total in that same area of all the wild horse and burros is only 7,656. And that in Goldfield they permit 227 horses and 71 burros in the Goldfield herd management area. And that's, in other words, they give more to the livestock, and this is much better than in most of the herd management areas. Usually they only give a fourth or less, sometimes as little as a tenth or 12th of what compared with the livestock.
So you see, folks, here's another example of the cattle industry taking over wild horses, legal herd management areas, and no one is contesting this in court. And we're hoping there's some people out there, lawyers, judges, who are as outraged as we are, that are going to try to save the great icon of the West, our wild horses. The cattle industry has overstepped its boundaries, and they need to be stopped. And the only people that are going to stop them are you, the listeners, you, the people who care.
And we can't see a single burro. We've come in here where 2.5 years ago, in October of 2008, I was in here and I saw a little band of little black burros. And now I don't see them, but I do see a few little signs along the road. There might be a few left, but not as many as there used to be. So I'm worried about them. What's happened? Were they shot? Were they rounded up by government contractors?
And then, is it Tom Seeley?
Seeley, yeah.
Tom Seeley is the who?
He's the Tonopah Field Office Manager.
He's the Tonopah Field Office Manager here for BLM. And he wants to zero out another wild horse herd management area so that he can just put burros here. But you see, that's what's happening. They're zeroing out the wild horses, pushing them out, now using the excuse that he wants it just for burros because it's too dry here for the horses. Yet in 1971, they found a thriving population of horses here. That's why it's a herd management area. And also, then Tom says, well, it's different fauna now, different plant life than horses. And it can't sustain horses. But isn't it interesting that Tom allows a much larger allotment of animal unit months for cattle than horses? How can cattle sustain in this dry area where horses live? See, folks? See the corruption, the lies and the deceit of our government, Department of Interior, and only you can stop it. We're begging you, we're asking some good people, are there any good Americans left that care to fight, that believe in preserving things? I don't know. I'm asking. It just takes a couple of good people. I hope you're out there. You're looking at a mine, and the way they talk about the wild horses, you would think this is the kind of destruction wild horses are causing to wild lands. Horses only enhance the land. They get these mining operations, they don't even require them to clean them up. They just dig and abuse. It's time American people stop this. And as you can see, folks, you just don't see any. These hills should be filled with their marvelous presence. And they once were, but not anymore. Nevadians just don't seem to really appreciate the treasure that they have. And they've allowed people to abuse and take away their herd management areas. And this is the result. We look and we look. We've seen some droppings. And so perhaps the horses and burros are telling us that they're afraid of humans. Maybe some bad people come up here and take pot shots at them. So it's really important that eco-industries, eco-tourist industries start sprouting up. It'd be a great business for Nevadians who are out of work. Then the powers that be would be more likely to allow for more wild horses and burros and give less to the cattle. It's all about money, folks, and interest. And as you can see, there's no one up here but Craig and I. So there's not much hope for these horses. And as Indian legend prophesies, as the last wild horse is taken from these lands, the United States loses its power, its backbone of the country, the wild horse. And isn't it interesting that coincidentally that is happening? A lot of people are no longer in touch with spiritual matters. Everything that is not of the five senses is to be reviled and miscreant. Science is the only God. And so people get less and less in touch with what's really important to us. The Great Spirit, being in touch with the Creator, our poetic and artistic side, the best part of it, giving it to technology. Meet America, folks. Your beautiful land. These are your public lands. They belong to you. You can come out of here anytime and camp out for free. Commune with the wild horses in the burro. Bring your family. And in doing so, you protect the wild horse and burro. And you protect our public lands from being taken over by corporations of mining and cattle and all the other interests that are now superseding the wild horse. Shh, wait, no. Wait till I single.
Okay, my name's Craig Downer. I'm a wildlife ecologist. And native Nevadan. I just wanted to say here that we're in the transition zone, or what's known as the ecotone, between the high, wet, cold desert further north in Nevada and the southern hot Mojave Desert, which becomes very hot further south. So this is a transition zone. So you see a mixture of species that occur in both of those desert types. And so both the wild horse and the more arid adapted burro should be able to live here and get along fine, find their niches here. We see, before I saw bands here and was able to observe them, and now I've gone in over an hour, and we've just seen a few little places where it looks like there might be a few burros surviving, but we haven't been able to see them. They're covering, scouring with my binoculars vast acreages, and not able to see a single band of burros. How sad.
You've been watching In Search of Wild Horses, and as you can see, when you go out for yourself, there's hardly any left. The BLM says that they're overpopulated and they need to be removed. Well, they've done a great job. They removed them all.